Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Skystars Ghostrider X95. This is not a tiny whoop in my opinion. This is a beginner 2-inch model, and the reason that I say that is it's got a 95mm wheelbase. We have got 2-inch Gemfan 2040 propellers, and the only relation to a tiny whoop or a cine whoop is this frame that are not ducts. These are protectors. It's almost like the T-Motor Falcon and the Diatone 239 got up to something in the evening and it produced this guy. So I don't think it's a clone either. I think it's a amalgamation of ideas, and I didn't actually like this guy that much. It's very crash resistant, Nick Burns proved that, but it was a struggle to tune. So I was a little bit worried when I saw this guy. However, this guy has got even thicker protectors, and I think there's a little bit of confusion on what battery should be used for this, because I've seen videos that are saying this is a 3 to 4S monster, and I can see why they would think that, because there is a part on Banggood's website that says recommended battery, and I think it says a 2 to 3S and 350 milliamp to 500 milliamp. But then if we move up to the motors, which are a 1104 7500 kV brushless motor, there is a little caveat at the side of that that says 2S. So yes, the ESCs can support a 2 to 4S battery. In fact, everything can. But when you try it, these motors on a 3S get incredibly hot. And when you put a 4S on there, I can't imagine the copter lasting very long. It's not designed for that. It's not meant to be powerful. And the more power you're going to put through this, the more damage you're going to do to the motors, and the more strange things that it is going to do because of all of these protectors that we've got here. So my recommended battery is this one. It is a 450 milliamp 2S GMB battery with an XT30 connector, and underneath we have got this strap. I'm not too fond of the strap. You kind of have to pull it through because it's one of those where it attaches on the other side rather than bends back over. We've got a silicone mat on here, and you can see even the silicone mat is in the format of a battery like this, and I found this to be the perfect battery. So it weighs 87 grams like this on its own, which for a 2-inch model isn't bad at all. And then it weighs 116 grams with this battery, which again for a 2-inch model isn't bad at all. So what else do you get in the package? You are given a spare set of these props, and then we have got this 1mm pitch 3-pin JST connector, and that is because this is the PMP version. You can get it as a bind and fly with various different receivers, which I'll link in the below. So let's take a look at some of the other specifications. So we have got the ESCs right at the bottom. They are a 4-in-1 20 amp BL Heli SESC, and I think that's where some of the confusion with the battery has come from. And then above that we've got an F4 flight controller with Betaflight on-screen display. We then have got a switching VTX using the Tramp protocol, and it switches up to 200 milliwatt. So you can't get to any of the buttons, but that's fine because we can use the Tramp protocol. And then above that we have got a LED array. Now, it's very unusual to take up weight for that, but I'll just show you because it's quite bright and I guess it's fun. So To plug in your receiver, if you've got the PMP version, it's just a 3-pin JST at the back, like I said, and I'm using, and this is going to shock some of you, a iBus receiver, because I got one that just plugged in. But not only that, look what I've got. Ta-da! This might surprise some of you guys. This is the Turnigy Evolution, and I absolutely love it. And there's a reason I've got it that I can't tell you, and another reason that I've got it that I will tell you, because at the making of this video where I'm located, it is just £26 at the moment, which is unbelievably cheap, and it's really great. I've been really loving it. You know, the things change colours when you move it, you can customise them, it's a touch screen, it's got a charging circuit. But anyways, more on that to come. Then up the front we have got the camera. It is a CMOS 4x3 camera, and you can change the angle there. I've got it at a fairly flat angle because it's windy today, so I don't want it going really fast, because then it's just going to have more drag factor on these ducks. So yeah, I guess you could fly it indoors. I wouldn't recommend it though. I think this is outdoors, and these protectors are for protecting the things that you hit outside rather than the things that you will most definitely hit inside. So it came flash with Betaflight version 3.53, which is a fairly recent version of Betaflight, and I was pretty impressed with the setup. But I say this with all Betaflight capable models, you're going to want to be accustomed to Betaflight and set it up how you like. It didn't have air mode in there, it had motor stop turned on, had air mode on a switch, funnily enough, but it had turtle mode on there, and I imagine with that tall top it's going to do that very well. But I didn't like the positioning of the on-screen display at all, so I moved that around. It also doesn't have a current meter, so it's quite tricky to know which battery to actually use. But I kept their PIDs. I did change my rates, but I kept their PIDs, and the reason I did that is I recognised that they were the type of PIDs to be used with a lighter battery rather than a heavier battery, which is why I think 2S is the limit for this guy. Okay, let's go for a line of sight with this guy. This is a 300 milliamp GMB 2S battery, and it's quite a windy day. I'm dodging rain clouds as well. So yeah, very conflicting with the battery on this one. They say 350 milliamp to 500 milliamp, 2 to 3S, but then the motors can only take a 2S. There is quite a lot of punch with this battery, and I imagine that is because it is lightweight. Makes me wonder what the flight time would be like. Probably quite short. But the reason I picked this small battery is because I took one look at the PIDs and I thought, if I put a big heavy battery on there, we're going to get oscillations. I'm not hearing any oscillations on this smaller battery, but I do fear that the flight time may be shorter than 2 minutes. So I accidentally flipped the beeper on there because I'm using the Turnigy Evolution, and I put everything on 2 switches. So the beeper's on the inside, it's not so loud, especially as it's a windy day. Let's see how it acros line of sight at least. You know, it's got plenty of power with this size battery. Hearing a little dip in the tones there, but of course FPV will be the test. But I'm happy with that amount of power, you know, for something like this. Right, battery definitely depleting there, so let's come in for a landing and try a 450 milliamp battery. Okay, so this time I'm going to try a GMB 450 milliamp 2S battery, which technically can provide more amps than the 300 milliamp battery. So we'll have to see if the extra weight of the battery actually affects that, because even though the weight of the battery is more, we could end up having more power than the lighter battery. So let's see. Yeah, I think that's the case, or it's very similar. Yeah, the power on this on 2S is not bad at all, and I'm not hearing any oscillations whatsoever. So I think if you are seeing videos out there where it's getting oscillations, they are using batteries that are too heavy, I would say. Try Acro. These are just the stock PIDs, folks. You have to remember, when you change the battery of a copter significantly, then you have to change the PIDs as well. Now, I reckon that we could possibly get a 2.5 minute, maybe even a 3 minute flight time with this 450 milliamp 2S battery. And with the conflicting information that there is on the website on what batteries to use, I would stick with a 2S. Plenty of power there, especially who this is aimed at, I would say. With having the ducks, it's going to be beginners, isn't it? That's all very well saying that this is flying fantastic line of sight, but that's because mostly line of sight, I'm flying it flat, and it's the forward momentum where the model starts doing strange things, and we only really find that out in FPV. And it could be the case that we find that the tune's not so great in FPV as well. But for line of sight, it's behaving and flying nicely. And I can see those lights flashing there as well. Let's see how noisy it is. Not too noisy. And you know, with a 2S, you could probably fly indoors as well. So let's take a look at some DVR footage, and as you could see from the GoPro footage, it is a really gloomy day, and I do think that the camera is a weak point on this model. It doesn't do light handling that well. That being said, it's not terrible either, and I'm able to fly with it. And as for how the copter was flying, I was really surprised, because we have got around about 15 mph winds now, and it was flying really smoothly. I mean, I could tell that it was being pushed against the wind, but we've got nice smooth rolls, and it wasn't tricking out like the diatone was. And you know, people think that just because you go up in cell numbers on a battery means that you get more power. That is not always the case if you are using a high kV motor. It's like when we go down in kV in the 5-inch world to go on a 6S battery, we do that to try and match the RPM of what it would be like at a 4S, because it is more efficient. However, at this size, 7,500 kV on a 2S is producing, for a beginner, plenty of power. And just look at this, I'm able to do all of my maneuvers and not trick it out. That was my cartwheel that I can't do with some of the other whoops out there, but I should stress this isn't really a whoop, and I think it'd be good for a beginner. There are videos out there that are completely rubbishing this model, and I think they have just used the wrong battery, and that's all I will say, because I had a good experience with this guy and with this 2S battery. it was getting a 3-minute flight time, which I think is ample, and I'm able to do these acro maneuvers. You can see it pitches back just ever so slightly, so maybe there is some to be done still on the PIDs, but this is straight out of the box and just flying it, and that's what I'm all into at the moment, because I think that's the biggest obstacle in the hobby, is people just getting stuck when it comes to the setup of these things and how to get them flying. And that diatone version that was very similar to this needed a lot of tuning before it would fly anywhere close to decent, and this is flying nicely. So yeah, I think I would recommend it. You know, this field here, it's about 120 meters long, and it was managing that. One thing that did catch me out, and you can see the battery voltage, 6.7 volts. I'm so used to the usual Mobula 7s flying at this point, but because we're using an XT30, you'll start to see some lines come across the screen, and that is the battery gone out. And that is actually correct. That is when a 2-cell battery should give up at around about 6.2 volts, which we can see there. So yeah, it did catch me out. But in general, I think for a beginner model, I actually quite liked it, and I think I'd recommend it. I'll link it in the below because it is a pricey model and there is a lot of competition in this space, so you'll have to make that decision for yourself. But I've shown you what this thing can do, so I will leave it there. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.